All right. Excuse me. All right, so the Sober Heathen episode 4, which is really going to be a review of episode 1, part 1 and 2. I got to thinking about it, and I feel like I may have shortchanged myself on really going into my story a little bit. In AA, they want you to tell folks, where you were, where you are now, and how you got there, and encourage not to be a drunkalog. But sometimes I think that is needed. Not glamorizing, but you need to get into it a little bit to really get the full effect. And a lot of times in speaker meetings, speakers only got 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and I may only talk for 7 this time. I don't know, but. I think what I'll do is just start back in the beginning. I was raised by my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother, she raised her daughter, which is my grandma. And then she raised my mother, at least partially. She stayed here quite often, and that's my understanding. And then my great-grandmother had me before I started kindergarten, so basically my entire life. Very few memories with my spending time or living with my mom, just a couple here and there. So I'm a fourth-generation alcoholic, as far as I know. I don't know anything about my great-grandparents' parents, but found out this year, I believe it was, maybe late last year, that my great-grandfather was an alcoholic. I remember them having meetings here at the house, but as a kid growing up, I always thought they were like church groups. But turns out they're having AA here. So my great-grandfather was an alcoholic. My mom's dad was an alcoholic. My mom's an alcoholic, and I am an alcoholic. Really hope this trend ends with me and my boys. They get the genes and the DNA from their mother, where they can, if they so choose to, consume alcohol when they're of age, that they can handle it like gentlemen and not have to go through the crap that I've went through. I didn't start drinking until I was 21. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, it was a week or two before I turned 21. I had some friends. I was living with some friends. They had birthdays in October. My birthday is in the second week of November. So it was a little before I turned 21, but I didn't have any alcohol before that. But if you're an AA member, you'll read in the big book, and many stories, fell in love from the moment I first tasted it. I'd always said that I was never going to drink. I wasn't going to be like my mom and my grandpa, and I wasn't going to be like them and be an alcoholic. Well, surprise, surprise, I'm probably a worse alcoholic than both of them. So Mike's Hard Lemonade is how it started, and I remember coming out of my bedroom after having, I don't even know how many, felt a little bit of something, and I kind of stumbled into the wall and laughed my ass off, and off to the races. I held off drinking beer for years until I realized that it's too expensive to drink liquor all the time. Said I was never going to drink beer, and I drank beer. Said I was never going to drink whiskey, I drank whiskey. Said I'd never do tequila. I didn't go nuts with tequila, but you get me a good buzz on me, and I'd take tequila shots, as many as somebody would offer. So drinking was troublesome early on. Called into work a lot, hungover. Was too busy drinking as opposed to going to college. When I went back to college, so I should back up. In high school, pretty decent athlete. Ended up with an offer to go to school to play baseball. And my social skills were lacking outside of my little small circle. And I went to a day and a half of orientation at college. And at lunch on the second day, I called my mom because I moved out of my grandma's house to go live with my mom after high school because I wanted some freedom. And my idea of freedom was staying up watching wrestling and playing video games and drinking pop and eating popcorn. That was all I wanted. I didn't want to go out and party. That's not what I was. So anyway, the second day of orientation, I called my mom and I was like, yeah, I don't think I can do this. And she said, oh, okay, come home. What? Really? And off I went. After things blew up there, not my fault, but that's not my story to tell. Moved out of there, moved in with my buddies, and eventually decided to start drinking. Made an ass out of myself, my fair share, during that time. When alcohol started to really be a problem, it was probably just before my boys were born in 2012. I was in a marriage, it wasn't a great one. I'm sure there's a lot worse ones out there. It was just one of those things where neither one of us, and I can't speak for her, but for me, it seemed like neither one of us could make the other one happy. Just wasn't meant to be. So I started drinking. We both got into habits. She had a habit of doing her thing at night, and so I decided one day, well, I'm going to do my thing, and it started with a half pint. And then it went from drinking a half pint to slamming a half pint, and then it went to 2 half pints for like a minute, and then right around 2012, maybe a little before, maybe a little after, it went to 4 half pints. And then I would have, when the boys were born, I would have breaks in there. But once the boys started sleeping through the night, and I would volunteer to sleep on the couch with the baby monitor so that if the boys made noises, I could get up and go check on them. Turned it into me trying to be a nice guy. I would fake cough, I would fake feeling sick so I could go sleep on the couch because I had 4 half pints stashed under the couch or somewhere in the house. Or out in my truck, and I'd just go get it once my wife at the time would go to sleep. And I would drink the half pints and chuck them out the window that didn't have a screen in it. And I would do that summer and winter. And then when I got up before everybody to go to work, I would pick up my bottles, hop in the truck, and then get rid of them, get rid of the evidence. So that was many, many, many years of, it was 4 half pints every single day. I would walk into the party store, same one every night, and the lady would, or the gentleman would be grabbing the 4 half pints and having them on the counter when they see me come in. So that, it was pretty darn consistent. When we would have family gatherings on the weekends, we'd go up to her parents' house on their lake, and I would have half pints stashed in the car or on myself, and I would just drink beer, and so everybody else could drink. I'd say, I'll just have a couple beers. So I'd drive the pontoon, or I would just drink beer in front of everybody, but then the half pints that I would bring, and then depending on how long we were there, I would go in and drink straight out of the bottles of liquor they had on top of their refrigerator. I'd always go in to use the bathroom last, so nobody would be in there to bother me. So started to get out of control. What was the problem? What led to that? I really can't think of anything in my childhood that made me feel really good about myself outside of sports, baseball in particular. I always had a girlfriend, but I never really worked for it. Just kind of happened. I had one friend that I'd hang out with, and Early on, when I was younger and I'd want to go to other friends' houses, I wasn't able to. And so I developed this isolation, I guess. I liked being by myself, doing my own thing. And if the one friend didn't want to hang out, I mean, I had a couple other buddies that I'd hang out from time to time, and I enjoyed that. But I was always uncomfortable. I never felt right. Even with my best friend, who was the next door neighbor, I just always felt off. Even though I knew them very well, I never felt right being at somebody else's house. So the social skills are pretty shit. Um, so clearly there was something there, mom issues. No matter what my mom did, no matter how many times she disappointed me, um, even up until very, very recently, when I've done my absolute best to let it go, there's just something inside me that, no matter what she did, I'd always go back for more. If I was drinking in previous years, I would reach out to her to start a fight, but I was reaching out for a reason. And part of me wanted to save her, part of me wanted just to have a reason to be mad at her, really. Um, and so I think trust issues, maybe abandonment issues, my great grandmother being overprotective, just no social skills, alcohol, and another famous line you'll hear all the time is alcohol made me everything that I wanted to be. I could talk to girls, I could make jokes, I could dance, I could attempt to be the center of attention. I loved going to bars, clubs. I loved going to clubs, and that was complete opposite of what I was when I was growing up. I'd go to a school dance, and it just very rarely was it something that I was jumping into and being like, "Oh heck yeah, I can't wait to do this." I was going in the hopes of flirting with some females, but I never really did any of that. And then when I'd actually dance with a girl, I was always trying to be silly or stupid because I was very uncomfortable. So anyway, kids are born. Alcohol starts taking a turn from the worst in 2018, end of 2017. Things are going bad to worse. Every time that I have some time away from the family, I feel like I gotta get super loaded. That's the only way that I can have fun. And drinking a fifth a night, every night, tolerance is pretty high. So I remember my last deer camp in 2017 with my ex-wife's dad and brother. It ended up just being her dad and myself, and I think I took 2/5 out to the deer blind with me for the evening hunt, and I came in, and it was just him and I, and he's like, well, let's go back to the house, which wasn't far, and see what the girls are doing. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I had at least a pint, maybe more, in my vehicle, and I couldn't leave that in there for somebody to find, and I couldn't just throw it out the window and waste the alcohol, so I chugged it, and by the time we got in the driveway, and I was walking in the door, I was stumbling and almost fell back through their glass screen door. Big argument, big fight, everybody's pissed off at me. I just remember being in the bedroom with my little boys that didn't know what was going on, and I'm playing with them, and then I go to sleep, everybody goes to sleep, and I'm on the couch, and I wake up in the middle of the night and kind of realizing what the fuck is going on, and I'm like, God damn it, this sucks. And so obviously big fights, and go back to work the next week, and get a phone call from my wife at the time at work, and she's not happy. I don't remember what it was about, but it was just one of those things that, not the perfect relationship, and then my alcoholism not helping anything, so she's just screaming on the other end of the phone, and I was relatively new to the job, or what I was doing that day, and people could hear her screaming, so I ran out the back door, and when we hung up, I went in, I was in tears. I was like, I just don't want to do this. I can't do this anymore. And I told the guy, and I left work. And left work and I went to my grandma's. I didn't know what to do. I was just sitting at my grandma's. I was going to drink. Well, I knew what I was going to do. I was going to drink. And a good friend of mine called me up and he's like, "Hey, why don't you come over for dinner, dude? And we can be here for you and talk about it." It's like, "Nah, man," because I didn't want to go talk about it. I just wanted to sit there, and I already knew it was going to be another fight, and I knew if I was going to be there, it would be even worse. But many ounces in, the mind starts changing, and you know what? I'm going to go over there for dinner. I didn't call them. I just headed that way. I didn't make it. I got boxed in by some cars on the highway, apparently. The memory I have is being pulled out of the cop car, or pulled out of my car and taken to the cop car, and I ended up in jail. And my wife and my two young boys, especially my wife at the time, she was freaking out, had no idea where I was. Everybody was worried about me. Finally, I got through to her from jail, and that was the end of that marriage. I wasn't happy, and I didn't voice myself very well, and that I have to take responsibility for that. And obviously, the alcohol didn't help anything. But after that marriage, and once not seeing the boys every night, that was gut wrenching. And then getting them every other weekend, and going and seeing them during the week, I started to get comfortable, and life was actually pretty good. I had the OWI. I lost my license for a month. But man, I started making. I moved back in with my great grandmother. I made the boys a bedroom. I was working. I was working a lot. I had money. I was paying child support. I was able to get my kids whatever they wanted. Probably too much what they wanted. And then but the days that I didn't have them, I was still buying the 4 half pints on the way home and drinking them on the way home. And then when I'd get here, I'd go to the gas station across from the house and drink until I pass out. And then I might make it to work on time. I might not. I might just sleep half the day. And when my bosses call, I don't answer. And then I hop in my truck and my Jeep and start driving. Call them back. It's like, "Oh, sorry, I was getting gas or something." And they never knew. I mean, maybe they did, but I didn't get fired for that. And then I started drinking when I had the boys on the weekend. It started out, I would wait till they go to sleep, and they were young enough in the beginning that you could get them in bed by 8 o'clock, and then Dad would be off to the drinking, and it's just terrible. So prior to that, I was on probation when everything was going well and I wasn't drinking. And the night that I got off probation, or was supposed to get off probation, I had a bunch of people over. I had the boys, gonna have a bonfire, and I started drinking like I used to drink. And I ended up passing out on the bed. My kids were scared. Then my ex-wife came and got the boys and brought the cops along with her. Little boys shouldn't have to go through that stuff. So that was a probation violation. Got some more time added on, breathalyzers, all that stuff. Time went on, got a little bit better, worked things out, got to see the boys again, found a really great woman. It was a great relationship. I still, outside of my drinking, I don't recall ever being mad at her, other than when I was drinking and she dumped out my alcohol or something, but not like mad at her. But in that relationship, that's where I ate the steak with my hands. If you heard that first part, it was a company dinner, 2 customers and my boss, one of my bosses. I pre-drank before I went there, and by the time that our dinner was brought to the table, I was so sloshed from the alcohol that I was drinking in the bathroom. They brought my steak, and I picked up my steak with my bare hands and was eating like a fucking animal. Didn't get fired. Kind of turned it into a joke. I had to go and apologize to the customers. Felt really stupid. That slowed me down for a minute. But then I ended up drinking so much. COVID hit. My job and one other one was the only one working, and I tried to get out of it to get laid off and get the COVID money, and they wouldn't let me. So I was drinking on the job. I was drinking all night, and I woke up in the hospital. Apparently I had a seizure. Luckily I didn't get an OWI in this, but that ended up costing me the job on that one. Fast forward, little periodic spurts of sobriety. Got a job making $23 an hour. I was the safety director. I was in charge of the entire safety program. It was in my hands. It was, I had my own office, made my own hours. I just bought a freaking awesome truck. I still got it for now. It won't be for long, though. I know that. But anyway, so I would drink at night, and then I started clocking in on my phone when I was supposed to be there, not really thinking about the GPS part of it. And they eventually took that away, but didn't say anything, but I knew. So then I started drinking and forced myself to get up. I would get to work. I would clock in at work. I'd make my presence known that everybody knew I was there, and then I would hop in my truck, and there were two shops, so one wouldn't know where I was at, and I would go and I'd park and I'd sleep for a little while. Well, turns out they caught on to that, and one day I was sleeping, and truck pulled up next to me, and I heard a horn beep, and I looked up, and it was the boss. He had his camera recording me, told me to pack my stuff and get out. So $23 an hour, unlimited potential down the shitter for alcohol. Again, just very minimal spurts of sobriety. Putting she, who was my fiance at the time, I didn't say that. And if you didn't hear the first talk, then you wouldn't have known that. But she did agree to marry me when I was sober early on, and I was very excited, very happy. And eventually took the ring off, and she said, until you get this figured out, I'm not gonna have the ring on, and then you're gonna have to ask me all over again, which, fair. But that never happened. So I got kicked out twice. The second time I woke up and the stuff was not all my stuff, but most of my stuff was on the table. Enough of my stuff was on the table that I knew what she meant. We weren't sleeping in the same bedroom anymore. All I was doing was in the basement drinking, completely ignoring my family. Her son, and my two boys. Scaring my boys more times than not. They'd be over for the weekend, and I'd get drunk and do something stupid, or I'd be sleeping, or they would think I didn't feel good. And I didn't feel good because I was fucking hungover. And my poor boys, they need to have a father that's way better than that. When I wasn't drinking, I was sober, I was a damn good father. And I can be that person. I just wasn't. So the day that everything was on the kitchen table, I packed up as fast as I could, not calling my ex-fiance, not calling and begging and saying, let me go to treatment, not trying to find a way to fix it. My drunken mind was so gone. All I could think of was like, okay, well, I got to get packed up, get out of here, go get internet set up, and then I can be drinking by 7 o'clock tonight. That's where my mind went. That doesn't mean that I didn't love the hell out of her and the three boys, because I did. I do. And this disease just warps your mind. You feel like you cannot do anything without it. And so before this happened, I should go back. In 2020, again during COVID, after I got fired, I was found passed out in a turning lane. There's some things still being worked out for that, so I'm not going to get into details of that, but you might be able to read between the lines on that one. March of this year, 2022, a cop showed up with a warrant, and I had a case that I had no idea. I wasn't hiding. I lived in Bay City for a year and a half, and they never came and got me, and then they finally decided to come get me in front of my 97-year-old grandmother, which I'm not putting blame on them. They wouldn't have had to be here if I wasn't a fucking idiot. So I ended up in jail, and that was after I'd went to treatment. At the end of 2021, my sponsor and a couple friends, they talked me into going to treatment on my own. So I went in January of 2022, and I stayed 60 days. I kicked ass. It was awesome. I felt great. I got out, didn't have any money, got back to my grandma's. My grandfather picked me up and brought me home, gave me a big hug, told me how proud of me he was. Shook my hand. There was a $100 bill in his hand, and that's all it took. 4 hours from leaving treatment. 4 hours after leaving treatment, at a treatment that's 2 hours away, and we stopped and got lunch. So that's how quick it took me to relapse. The relapse was on, and it was on very hard. In that time, I went to the hospital in 35 days. I went to the hospital 4 times, as I mentioned in the other video. One time woke up with a tube down my throat, not knowing how I got there. Another time I had my kidneys were failing, and my potassium levels had dropped. My blood pressure was very, very low. I could not walk. I could not walk without falling. I had to crawl, and I went to bed that night not sure if I was going to wake up, and I can't say with absolute certainty that I really cared if I did. I was scared. I woke up to the MS people coming in. One guy talking shit, coming up the stairs because they'd been here so many times. They took me to the hospital, and I checked myself out early, AMA, against medical advice every single time, just to get back here to drink some more. And in that time is when I came downstairs one day, and there were 2 cops here to arrest me for the thing that happened a year and a half prior. So back to treatment I went after I got out of jail, and this time I stayed for 80-some days, then went into their transitional living home, and all in all it was 218 days that I spent between treatment and transitional living. And again, I got a job. I got certified as a recovery coach. Was working at a recovery treatment center. My kids were talking to me a little bit. My ex-fiance was talking to me again. My exit date was coming. I've been trying for weeks to try to find a place to go after treatment. Scammers and things falling through, and finally they fell through. Had a little issue with my sponsor. Next thing I know, I'm sitting in my truck. I got alcohol. I call my sponsor. He didn't answer. I called a friend. He didn't answer. And I don't know if I would have stopped anyway. I don't know if I was just going through the motions. I can't say that honestly. If I had to guess, I would say that it wouldn't have stopped me. And I drank, and I woke up to cops knocking on my truck window, and again, something I'm not going to get into right now, but so that was this year. Just I guess that would be about 41 days ago, actually. So I spent some time in jail for that. A really awesome human being came to see me, offered to help me in so many ways, and is still helping me. And for that, I'm very blessed. That's where I was. That's where I am. I'm trying to do this podcast just to talk things out myself. I mean, I've been in treatment for about 250 days this year alone, and I've been talking, and I've been talking, and I've been talking, and I have to keep talking. for myself, and if by the off chance somebody listens to this and be like, man, I don't want to be like that, because I know that I heard stories like this when I first started drinking and going to AA, and I put that three-letter word at the end of everything. Oh my God, look at that guy. Well, at least I haven't done that yet. Well, at least I've never been to jail yet. At least I've never done this yet. All those yets came true. The only thing I haven't done yet is die. And if I go back to alcoholism, if I go back, I will die. Day before yesterday, I was looking for something in my old room here at my great grandmother's, and found it pretty much full, fifth of cheap, I don't even know the name of the shit, but nasty ass vodka. If I would have found that half gallon, I said fifth, it was a half gallon. If I would have found that before I went back into treatment back in March, if I would have known that was here, I don't know if I would have made it to treatment. I don't know, I might have died. That's how bad everything was. And I grabbed it, and I didn't have any desire. That's not the right word, because I did. I wasn't in danger of drinking it, but I definitely wish that I could have and got away with it. Because 40 days of sobriety, even after 218 consecutive and a one-day fuck-up, this disease still has full control of your mind. It's different for everybody. I don't wish this on anybody, but the opposite of addiction is connection, man. I'm trying to stay connected by doing this. If you hear this and you're struggling with it, talk to somebody, man. thesoberheathen@yahoo.com. Find me on Facebook. If you're listening to it, you probably know who I am anyway. Talk to me. If you're somebody that knows somebody that's struggling and you don't know how to act, or you don't know why they don't love you enough to quit, that ain't it, man. They love you. They love the hell out of you. They don't love themselves. They love you. And it's not for lack of want. You gotta want it. It's not that simple. There's a lot more to it. You have to completely give up in order to beat this. And I know that sounds like, well, you're giving up by drinking. Well, I'm here to talk if anybody wants to talk. I think what I want this podcast to be is a message to those that are struggling, but just as much, and with this recovery coach certification, I think recovery coaches need to be there for the people in the Al-Anon part of it too. I know very nice people that have had relationships with people that just fucking batshit crazy because the disease has a grip, has a hold. And if I can help them understand and you realize that, eventually both sides, eventually when you're dealing with somebody with an addict, you got to cut the cord and you got to walk away. Because if they're not willing, disease or not, if they're not willing, you're just going to torture yourself. So don't be afraid if you get to that point where you're like, the only thing I can do is walk away. If they continue to drink because you walk away, they put the bottle to their lips. I put the bottle to my lips. Of all these things, some people that don't understand it, they'll say, oh, it was just an excuse. Well, okay, maybe it was. That's why when I call certain people, when I'm thinking about drinking, I'm not going to call the person that's going to tell me no if I really want to drink. If I really want to drink, I'm going to call somebody else. Or I'm going to shoot a text. You have to make that decision. Um, the first step in AA is admitted that we are powerless over alcohol and that our lives have become unmanageable. You have to admit it. You have to own it up. You have to admit that that habit that you had is now an obsession. When all you can think about when you wake up is, okay, what time can I start drinking? Or you wake up, okay, where'd I leave that bottle? It's an obsession, man. It's got its claws in you, and it's not all your fault. Gotta ask for help. This is fun. I really enjoy doing this. I hope somebody listens and gets a shred of something out of it. But keep fighting. No matter what side you're on, keep fighting. Love you all. Good night.